It's an honor that the Alice Awards has made the Strand its home for the last 4 years. I'm Nancy Bass-Wyden. I'm the owner of the Strand. It's important for indie bookstores and a place like the Strand to exist today because we are community centers. The Alice Awards and the Strand are totally aligned in our love of the printed word and devotion to it. I also want to say that my dad's favorite drink was this Manhattan. So a toast to you, a toast to the Alice Awards, a toast to finishing 2020.
Cheers. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. So happy to see you here. It's too bad we aren't at the beloved Strand today, but next year, surely. I'm Joan Davidson. I am here upstate at my house on the Hudson River. Furthermore's headquarters is not far from here, nearby in the historic town of Hudson, New York. I began the Alice in 2013 in honor of my mother, Alice Mannheim Kaplan, and she believed in the importance of the illustrated book as a work of art in itself and, in a way, as an essential element of a civilized society.
This year's celebration affords me the wonderful opportunity to reflect on the very first Alice Award, which in 2013 we marked at the Morgan Library and Museum in Mr. Morgan's library during my tenure as director of that storied institution. And what more fitting place to inaugurate what has become an annual occurrence, the celebration of the beautifully made, richly illustrated book, a publication that combines outstanding content with the highest standards of production and design.
I'm a member of the Alice jury, but I also had the honor and true pleasure of being the first Alice Award recipient. The award winner was this book, Youth and Beauty, Art of the American Twenties, which was published to accompany the exhibition of the same name in 2011 at the Brooklyn Museum.
This is a book that is now a classic. It is a magnificent book where everything from the texture of the paper to the way it is designed, and it becomes a total look from around the book, including the wonderful end papers of the book that brings you into the drawings itself. It's a total experience of Hopper and his art from the most intimate point of view. And the illustrations are magnificent. It is a timeless book, a book that will serve its purpose for many years to come, a book that I think represents the very best of what book design can be, and something that represents the very important ideals of the Alice Award itself. In the spirit of Edward Hopper, I would like to tip my hat to Joan Davidson and the Furthermore Foundation. Thank you very much.
You're driving along the road, you notice something, you slow down, you pull over, suddenly the air is different, the light is different. And I think this really heightens the perceptual awareness. A number of photographers have spoken at length actually about the shift in perception between driving and walking. Those tiny little unexpected events that happen, every time you turn your head or you lift your camera to your eye, or the light changes, or something strays into your field of vision.
Back in 2016, the Fraser was given the very prestigious award, the Alice Award, for our partnership with the University Press of Kentucky.
Kentucky by Design. The decorative arts in American culture was a celebration of the 80th anniversary of the Federal Art Project's Index of American Design.
Thank you so very much. It's great to be here with all of the other prestigious winners, and most importantly, congratulations to this year's winner.
Everyone at BGC was truly honored to have been selected for the Alice Award in 2017 for Charles Percier, Architecture and Design in the Age of Revolutions. This catalog accompanied an exhibition conceived and curated by Jean-Philippe Garrigue, which opened at BGC in New York and then traveled to the Chateau de Fontainebleau outside of Paris. Today, I raise a virtual glass to my friends and colleagues, to Joan, to Furthermore, and to Alice. I very much look forward to celebrating with you all in person next year. And to quote our friend, Excelsior.
A book is our time travel machine, emphasizing our understanding of what it means to be in the world at different parts of our history, to discover things that were already there, to catalog and order the natural world. I guess what I'm offering here is a kind of veritable defense of the book. Art books especially enrapture. I remember being in grad school and getting a copy of a Yale book, Cities and People by Marc Girard, and realizing that alongside the splendid text and beautiful images was a third kind of intelligence, a graceful editor that choreographed the dance between them. This, in effect, is already enhanced contact. The art book is a kind of enhanced print book. And holding that book in my hand was probably when I realized what a publisher was and that I wanted to be one.
This exhibition was comprised of 56 photographers' visions of the American South over the first decades of the 21st century. Accordingly, this landmark project offers a composite image of a region in flux. We're delighted to receive the Alice Award for the 400-page book that accompanied the exhibition. This recognition has been a tremendous boost to our organization, as it is an acknowledgement of excellence in an incredibly competitive field.
The brilliant Alice jury are Bob Bleckman, artist and illustrator you've seen in the New York Times, Terry Carbone, who is now in charge of the arts for the Henry Luce Foundation, David Godine, independent publisher, Sharon Gallagher, who is president and publisher of Artbook DAP, Bill Kelly, the brilliant Andrew Mellon, director of the New York Public Library, Max Rudin, who is publisher of the Library of America, Ian Wardropper, brilliant director of the Frick Collection, from whom you are going to hear words in a few minutes, and the indomitable chair of the Alice jury, Jock Reynolds, brilliant former director of the Yale University Art Gallery. And I think that is some jury.
We should all raise a glass and have a sip of the Manhattan, this year's cocktail to celebrate the Alice Award. So here before me, you can see the covers of the 4 shortlisted books. The submissions this year were so strong across the arts, across the natural world, the interdisciplinarity between the arts and the natural world, that the jury came up with 5 books. Our winner and these 4 wonderful books that are gaining recognition as well. Here before us now is the wonderful submission from the Museum of American Art at the Smithsonian, whose author and art historian Eleanor Hartney's put together a marvelous exhibition and brings forth the work of someone who came to America and South America for not that long a time and deeply influenced the art and the cultural and the study of natural history and indigenous people. This book is redolent with beautiful images, great scholarship, and is something that I think the Smithsonian and Eleanor and her colleagues can be very, very proud of.
I've spent 6 years delving into the influence of Alexander von Humboldt on all facets of American life. His visit in 1804 to meet Thomas Jefferson, his encouragement of America's scientific potential, starting with the Lewis and Clark expedition, his impact on American artists from Charles Wilson Peale to Frederick Church and Samuel F.B. Morse, and his lasting impact on his support for American democracy. This is an interdisciplinary project drawing on all aspects of the Smithsonian Institution as we follow Humboldt from a scientific genius to a humanitarian who believes that all races are equal and that America needs to abolish slavery and treat its indigenous communities as equal citizens. It is an honor to be on the shortlist for the Alice Award, and the $5,000 that comes with that award will help us continue to pivot our programs into an online portal. We've been able to reach a global audience with our Humboldt programs and other museum programs, and this is clearly the wave of the future. We are deeply appreciative to be able to put this award to use in order to make us more visible, more accessible, more relevant to our national and international audience.
Another book that's really remarkable. It comes in 3 different volumes from the University of Washington Press, Fishes of the Salish Sea. And this is, again, the work of an artist and 2 naturalists who have chronicled all of the sea life from the upper peninsula all the way down. And what's notable about this is someone who happens to be a fisherman like myself. Many of these species range all the way up into Alaska, British Columbia, and all the way down the California coast. Remarkably and beautifully produced illustrations throughout. It's just a knockout.
This book, or a version of it, has been on my mind for more than 40 years, ever since moving to the Pacific Northwest in 1978 to begin teaching the biology of fishes at the University of Washington. Right from the start of my teaching, I realized the need for a book to help students better identify the many species of fishes that live in the Salish Sea. You know, one of the biggest difficulties in producing a book of natural history of this kind is to find a way to adequately illustrate the animals. At first, Jay and I began to collect photographs, but we soon realized that the quality was very uneven and that the mix of photos that we might have put together would not have produced a very good result. But then the thought was to contact Joe Tormolari. Now, Joe, without question, is the world's greatest illustrator of fishes. We were thrilled when he agreed to join us to make drawings of all 260 species. We send our sincere thanks to President Joan Davidson and Administrator Ann Brickmeyer. And with that, I'll sign off and say a final thanks to all for this wonderful recognition. Thank you very much.
This book is called The Curious World of Seaweed, and this was created by an artist, Josie Eisland. And the press for this book is an independent press in Berkeley. It's called Heyday Press. And this wonderful artist looked at many of the representations of seaweed that exist in botanical specimen books. And then she went out herself and photographed all kinds of examples of seaweed. This book is just full of very, very beautiful images. So this artist brings to this book both a very interesting aesthetic take on it, but it's juxtaposed with the work of naturalists over the years who have documented all of these wonderful seaweed forms.
I feel passionately about the power of visually driven books to bring audiences and readers into unfamiliar territories, such as the world of seaweed, an under-recognized yet essential part of our ocean universe. I've been studying marine algae for over a decade. It began with a gesture. I was out on a local reef a bit north of my home here in San Francisco, and I happened to hold a scrap of seaweed up to the sky. Astounded by the color and form, it was probably a deep magenta, I was determined to get it back to my studio and onto my flatbed scanner. I've been scanning seaweeds and kelp specimens ever since. This visual exploration prompts the questions that have taken me deep into the science and natural history of these primary producers of our oceans. Seaweeds and kelp sequester carbon, oxygenate our nearshore waters, and are the base of the food chain, besides much, much more. Thank you furthermore for supporting the curious world of seaweed, and thank you to the Alice Awards. I am supremely humbled to be included.
And here you have the Shinto, the discovery of divine in Japanese art. This book, too, comes from the Cleveland Museum of Art. If any of you have not visited the Cleveland Museum since it renovated its 2 buildings and added a 3rd, and seen its Asian art collections, let me at least tell you that I think it's one of the most beautiful installations you'll ever see at a museum anywhere in America. And as much as people talk about the greatness of art on the 2 coasts, the Cleveland Museum and its Asian collection are an absolute joy to behold and contain every aspect of Asian culture in a wonderful manner as represented in this great publication.
I was delighted to hear that our team's publication, Shinto, Discovery of the Divine in Japanese Art, was shortlisted for this year's Alice Award. The cover of our publication is graced with an image of Tenjin-sama, the god of literature. Over the course of putting the exhibition and publication together, I had the opportunity to visit Tenjin shrines all across Japan, from Kyushu in the south to Kamakura in the east. While this year, I probably won't have the opportunity to enjoy the plum blossoms in early spring at Tenjin shrines, I can always turn to the pages of our publication to enjoy the memories. I would like to thank the selection committee for recognizing our efforts on this exhibition and publication.
An impressive group of shortlisters indeed. Congratulations to them all. And now we have the pleasure of hearing some words from our very own Ian Wardropper.
I was looking forward to speaking in the Strand bookstore, but like so much else during the pandemic, this has gone virtual. When I was a graduate student in New York in the 1970s, I used to haunt the Strand. Nearly 50 years later, I am downsizing my personal library, including many of those Strand purchases, and I'm making hard choices. Is it a classic? Does it continue to be useful? Does it have an emotional tug? Was it the book that gave me a revelation? Or is it simply an intelligently written and beautifully produced book that is exemplary? The latter is what the Alice Awards celebrate. This year's award winner, Infinite Cities, has provoked me to think anew about this city that I have known off and on for a half-century. How it's changed or not changed, what is happening to it now, and what will it and other American cities look like post-pandemic. My personal map of Manhattan in 1975, the year of the famous Daily News headline, "Ford to City Drop Dead," crisscrossed Central Park from the Upper West Side to NYU's Institute of Fine Arts on East 78th Street, up to the Metropolitan Museum and down to the Frick, further downtown to Soho art galleries or odd places like the Mud Club. The brilliance of Infinite Cities is the way that it turns such maps into narratives of people or ideas over time. The map City of Women renames all the subway stops after women, for instance, so that my local would be Yoko Ono and nearest to the Frick, Audre Lorde. It overturns the notion of streets named after men and makes one think of the role of women in urban society, from Greta Garbo to Lady Gaga, and the parts of the city they strolled through. The long overdue movement to make statues of women in New York is part of this revisiting of our past. Other provocative maps reveal the cyclical nature of life in cities. Stops and Starts, Homer Plessy's unfinished ride, charting his deliberate challenge to whites-only trams in New Orleans in 1892, or Riots, periodic eruptions in volcanic New York, surveying the draft riots of 1863 up to Occupy Wall Street in 2011, echo in protests of racial injustice today. The wildly imaginative Monarchs and Queens, correlating patterns of butterflies and gay life in San Francisco, traces history up to the vibrancy of the LGBTQ movement today. Shifting but recurring patterns of city life this trilogy identifies are reassuring today in the uncertainty of the pandemic. But the title of the New York volume, Non-Stop Metropolis, prompts us to ask, what is the future of this and other cities when health concerns forced its 24-hour subway service to stop for the first time in history? But what makes cities work is their role as centers, accommodating both large and small. As Rebecca Solnit points out, and I listen to her, Men Explain Things to Me rests warningly on my wife's bedside table. New York is center of fashion, capital, publishing, visual art, media, among others. It is the exchange of ideas, interconnectedness, rivalry, but at the same time mutual support, and capacity for reinvention that make cities hubs of creativity and that argue for their continued existence. Like books which seemed endangered by digital but have bounced back in this time of enforced seclusion, cities may change, but we need them. Thank you and congratulations to this year's Alice Award winners.
I just want to express my profound thanks and the press's thanks to the J.M. Kaplan Fund and the Furthermore Grants program for recognizing Infinite Cities with this year's Alice Award. Joshua Jelly Shapiro, Rebecca Snedeker, our fantastic designer Leah Chandra, and all the contributors were able to build on these ideas with remarkable innovation and trust to create this lasting monument to public history.
I'm on my 6th day of no power here in New Orleans after Hurricane Zeta, which has just given me a chance to reflect on this trilogy as documentation of these 3 coastal cities in this moment in the so-called Anthropocene. All of these cities are going to be changing. I think a lot of these books will be around after New Orleans is, and I'm just grateful for this time to consider their beauty and value.
Thank you so much. We are so honored to have our Atlas trilogy recognized, and with such remarkable other books on the list, all of which I'm going to go out and buy. Maps were something I had always loved. I found when the first Atlas came out that it's something that actually a lot of people love and crave and maybe have been a bit deprived of. These books for me have been about 2 endangered phenomena: cities in the old sense of the crossroads of the world, places of economic and ethnic social diversity, and maps in an era where everybody just takes instructions mindlessly from their phones. And it was a joy and an adventure and a ton of work, and we love doing it, and we thank you so much.
You are essential to life in America, life in the world. Accept our admiration and gratitude and our love. Excelsior, and thank you.